Okay. All right. So yesterday we began learning about the unique quality of Purim and how that surpasses all other holidays. That even when Mashiach will come, not only will Purim be celebrated like every other halacha in the Torah goes on forever, and therefore all the halachas will keep. Mashiach will come, and all holidays will be celebrated, but all other holidays won't be that significant because of the incredible light and warmth and joy that we'll have just because Mashiach is here. But Purim is something that will still shine even after Mashiach comes, because there's something about Purim that will even contribute to the elevated state that will be in that time. And then we brought the story of the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab was discussing with this religious intellectual about his observance of Yiddishkeit, and this guy was saying, I do all the things that Yiddishkeit says, but however, I don't feel any relationship to the concept of angels and prophecy and godliness. It just seems so distant. And Rebbe Rashab responded with a parable of people who are traveling, Rebbe Rashab and this guy who are traveling together to go to this health spa, this health resort. And Rebbe Rashab said, we are traveling, we have in mind why we're traveling. We're traveling because we want to go to this health resort in order that we should have more energy and vitality and enthusiasm and joy in our observance of Torah. And the wagon driver is traveling because he wants to get paid. And the horses are traveling because in front of the horses there's this bag of hay, and they want to get that hay. So the Rebbe Rashab said, just because the horses are thinking about the hay, does that make the angels stop being angels? Just because, in other words, everything about Purim, just because we don't necessarily feel the incredible impact of what Purim is, doesn't mean that Purim isn't this incredible revelation that we're talking about. Every year, as we looked yesterday, that the Baal Shem Tov says that if you read the Megillah in a way that it's just something of the past, you're not doing a mitzvah. It has to be, if you read the Megillah in a way that you feel it's happening right now. And it is, because the revelation that happened then descends to the world again, every year. I just wanted to highlight something we learned yesterday, which I thought was fascinating. It's fascinating to me because it sounds so similar, and yet it's so different. The intellectual who was speaking to Rebbe Rashab sounded like Nasiv and Nishma. I'm doing this even though I don't understand it. But the Rebbe says there's a big difference between what he was saying and Nasiv and Nishma. Nasiv and Nishma means I accept it fully, 100%, and I believe in it, and I'm going to go all the way with every fiber of my being to do this because this is the truth. That's what Nasiv and Nishma means. We will do before we understand. I'm totally present in what Hashem wants. That's Nasiv before Nishma. This guy was saying this has no relevance to me. All this is something that I'm used to doing, and therefore I will do, but has no relevance to me. This is something which has nothing to do with me. So he used words that sound like Nasiv and Nishma. I'm just doing it because I don't understand it. But he ejected Judaism from his life. It's like he was like a guy who shared in the minute of Torah yesterday about a guy who collected stamps about Judaica, and the Rebbe says to him, in addition to collecting stamps about Judaica, Jews are always, a human being always wants to be more elevated today than yesterday, and therefore you should want to not just go after Judaica stamps, but go after Judaica itself, go after Judaism, after the truth, after the mitzvahs. So that's basically what we learned yesterday, how Purim is this incredible yontif, whether or not we understand or feel what this is, but something incredible is happening every year, something that surpasses even the revelation of Mashiach. One more important point we mentioned yesterday, which I have to repeat, and that is the Megillah, the words of the Megillah, which tell us to remember the Megillah. And by remembering the Megillah, that will make it happen again, conclude with, which we learned that by remembering it with all your heart, the Torah wants you to, that causes the revelation itself. It's not just that we're supposed to, but by doing this, it causes the revelation itself. even more than whatever exists organically in the day. The Megillah concludes that verse with the words, and its memory will not cease from their children. And we spoke about how specifically by connecting our children to Yiddishkeit in a way that they don't let go of it, specifically by doing that, that will bring all the blessings of the Megillah, of light and joy, gladness and honor. And a person is always in need of Hashem's blessings, because however much you have, a human being is born with this need of having more. So a Jew always needs all the blessings of Hashem, and the key to getting all these blessings is by devoting ourselves to helping Jewish children learn Torah. That's basically what we learned yesterday. Let's continue now. I'm going to paraphrase from page 185 in the bottom. Ois test, the second segment of the Farbrengen. I just one last point. There's a lot of points in this Farbrengen that I just love. That is the last point of how this is the reason why our Rebbeim made such an effort for Jewish education in our time, because this is key to the coming of Mashiach. The very last verse of the Tanakh is how the children will bring their parents to the Torah. So this verse is mentioned last in the Tanakh because this is key to bringing Mashiach, and therefore the Rebbeim, specifically in our time, the time of Mashiach, made such an emphasis on reaching out to Jewish children and bringing them closer to the Torah. Okay, Ois Tes. We've explained earlier the great virtue of the days of Purim, how the Jewish people have fulfilled whatever they accepted at the giving of the Torah. They accepted the giving of the Torah, but it wasn't really that of such a deep acceptance because they were coerced, so to speak, at the time of giving the Torah, because of the incredible revelation of godliness that was then. It wasn't their own acceptance. But the story of Purim highlights how the Jewish people accepted the Torah from their own goodwill, with light and joy and happiness and enthusiasm, and not just for a day, but they did this throughout the entire year. Under the duress of Haman's decree, they still kept the Torah and mitzvahs in public throughout the whole year. And not just they kept it themselves, but Liosam Mizarim, they did not cease in their children also kept the Torah. Someone sent me today an interesting thing. The previous Rebbe writes, I mentioned yesterday how Mordechai studied with the children, and he told the children to run away because Haman was coming, and they told Mordechai, we're with you that are alive, and how Mordechai inspired the children to study the Torah. So someone sent me this morning a few lines of a Maimon, the previous Rebbe, who says the inspiration that happened then was through not just Mordechai, the students of Mordechai. It wasn't Mordechai alone. Mordechai wasn't by himself. Mordechai had his students who were dedicated and believed in Mordechai, who were also involved. So it wasn't just like, rely on the Moshe Rabbeinu generation to take care of everything. Moshe Rabbeinu had his students in that time and has his students in our time who need to be dedicated to Jewish education. Okay, so that learning the Torah by the children was what scared Haman, and that's what brought the miracle of the light and the joy and gladness of honor. And so much so, this brings such a great revelation that even Mashiach will come, Purim will still have importance. And although right now this is hidden, but this is similar to someone who's very wealthy, but it's not the money is not in their pocket, it's in the bank. Doesn't make a difference if the money is in your pocket in a way you can count it with your fingers every single day, or you have an assurance from a healthy institution that is keeping your account. This is the money in your account. So if this is true for a business institution of human beings, that who knows what will happen tomorrow, in the language of the Gemara, how much more so when you have a promised and King of all kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that fulfillment of the Torah mitzvahs is in a way that we eat the fruits of Torah and its mitzvahs in this world. As we said in the morning blessings this morning, Torah and mitzvahs, by keeping Torah mitzvahs, there's a reward in the world to come, but that we eat the fruits of the benefit of Torah mitzvahs in this world. Among the things that are counted that bring us blessing in this world is educating our children in the path of Torah. Because the Mishnah writes the words, one of the things that brings benefit in this world is kindness. So this is the greatest kind of kindness that brings a person blessing in this world and the world to come. In addition to the fact that we teach our children Torah, that's Torah study, which at the end of the Mishnah it says that Torah study is equal to all merits together. But besides that, it's the highest form of kindness. And furthermore, not only is there a blessing in this world, but it says the principle, the fruits of the blessing again in this world. But the principal blessing, the main blessing, is reserved for the world to come, which is infinite. And that's why the Gemara says that there can't be a reward in this world as much as we would imagine the greatness of this world. We know that how far away the sun is, etc. Still, we cannot receive the full reward of even one mitzvah. How much more so a mitzvah that has an impact on all generations, like education has an impact on all generations, that you educate your children in a way that they'll educate their children. So this bears fruit, and its fruit bears fruit. So certainly, they were talking about an incredible kind of reward. I was just talking to one of my children yesterday, who asked me a question that I asked my Zayda when I was a child. It was really funny, exactly what they were saying over here. I used to always wonder if it's an avera to start Ma'ariv 1 minute before Shabbos is over. And I remember asking my Zayda, and my Zayda says, it's okay. And my son Zalman asked me the question yesterday. He says, I noticed it out of Ma'ariv a few seconds early sometimes. It's okay. Anyways, but whether it's the right answer or the wrong answer, that's a different subject. The point is that I was educated to ask these kind of questions, and now, Baruch Hashem, thank God, my son's still asking this question, made this day. Anyways, so there's a tremendous reward, and this reward is put in a bank, which is in the world of Atzilus. That's the proprietor of the bank, the owner of the bank, is the King of all kings, Hashem, and he says that he has for you this incredible reward. Yesterday at Dav Minchen Chase Bank, you know what I'm talking about, down Pico, where we used to have a Chase Bank, now it's a shul. So that's what it was saying. It was saying you should look at the Torah and the mitzvahs and the reward you have. It's put in a bank, and Hashem is holding on to it. It's real. And the virtue of Purim is incredible. It really is in something that is in greater than days of Mashiach. So conversely, when this is understood that in order to, because it's such incredible revelation, so the Lu'umazeh, the other side, the side of the unholy, makes a war against this in the small world that is man in every single person. Because of the incredible revelation that we're working towards, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, fights against it. Yonatan is here. Yonatan, by a Farbrengen, when someone comes in late to the Farbrengen, the guy leading the Farbrengen always says, Vayavoy, which is, and he came, and Haman came, like it's an insult. You're supposed to know in Atlanta, when someone says that to you tonight, and you come late to Farbrengen, you should respond with El Paray, Vayavoy, and he came to Paray. All right, anyways, moving right along. We should see no. I don't want to mistranslate this, but I think that the translation is, from the snake comes the viper. From the snake, which is Amalek, comes the viper, which is Haman. So just like when we left Mitzrayim, when we went to receive the Torah, Amalek attacked us because he wanted it to stop us from getting the Torah. So too Hashem commands us to destroy the seed of Amalek in every generation, as the Mechilta says that there's a war of Amalek midor dur. What's midor dur? From all generations, from the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, the generation of Moses, and the generations after Moshe Rabbeinu, until our generation of Mashiach, there is a war with Amalek. Even then, there'll be such a war, says the Mechilta. That means it's a constant war. And this is a special power and assistance we get from God to be able to be victorious of this war. So what's the strength that Amalek has to fight this war? Again, the reason we're talking about Amalek now is because since we said there's such a great revelation on Purim, so the Rebbe says there's also a great force that tries to stop this, because Hashem made the world in a way that there's Klippa opposes Kedusha, that whenever there's a greater revelation, there's also something that stops it. You see this in every Jewish house. I doesn't mention this here, but in every Jewish home, on a holy day and a special day, there's more discord than a regular day. You think it's a holy day, and everyone's happy, No, dafka, when it's a holy day, a special day, that's when the shalom bayis, that's when it's hardest to keep peace in your home, because the Yetzer Hara knows how such great holiness there, and therefore he wants to prevent there from being that holiness in the home, and therefore he tries to make machlekes, make fights. Anyways, so what's the way that Amalek is able to attack us? It says in Hayom Yom today, quoting from the verse, the Jewish people were attacked by Amalek in this place called Rephidim. Doesn't make sense, the Rebbe says. How is it possible the Yetzer Hara can go over to a Jew? A Jew has a neshama, and the neshama is an actual part of God. So how does the Yetzer Hara have any foothold? How does he able to have a step in the court against the Jewish people, against the Jew? And how could he accomplish something against the Jew? The Jew should listen to him. When a Jew has a part of God in his soul, deep in his soul, he has a part of God. How does the Yetzer Hara have any power over him? The only reason this is possible is because there is a weakness in the godly soul. As the Gemara says, what does Refidim mean? Amalek attacks us in Refidim. It says the Jewish people's hands were weak in their service of Hashem. And because they were weak in their service of Hashem, that gave the Yetzer Hara the ability to make an effort to try to persuade and seduce us, and even to maybe we'll listen to it. So what is the first step of the Yetzer Hara? Let's go to Yisud Aleph from the bottom of page 187. What's the way Amalek attacks us? What's the first thing that that Yetzer Hara tries to do to a Jew? What's the very first thing? We can understand this from what the Medrash says about the cause that what brought Amalek. The command to remember Amalek is brought in the book of Devarim in context right after the Torah mentions how you should have honest weights and measures. The Medrash comments on the honest weights and measures thing and says, Al oven zem b'shvum meshkolis, shemasa shnei sukim meshkols de luktandim, shtamish pamzu pamzu, the ramis sakena, oyes hamecha, kvishiste b'vori bal Amalek. Amalek, the Mechiltas, the Medrash says, the person has two kinds of measures in his house. He has one smaller measure and one larger measure, and they're both supposed to be for, let's say, a pound. He has one larger pound and one smaller pound, and he uses a larger pound when he is buying, and he uses the smaller pound when he is selling. So because of the sin of using false weights and measures, says the Medrash, that's why Amalek comes. Next page doesn't make any sense. It's true that this is a biblical prohibition. We're not allowed to do that. But why is this the thing that brings Amalek? There's so many different kinds of things. The Torah says there's 365 Averas. Why is this the key to unleash that monster? The answer is Amalek was saying Yisrael. Amalek is the greatest enemy we've ever had. We have. And therefore, regarding Amalek, the Torah says, remember what Amalek does to you. Don't forget Amalek. And the Mechilta says, don't say that. Oops, hold on. Don't keep any of the animals of Amalek. Mechilta says, as we read in the Haftorah last week, that Hashem wanted that the Jewish people should destroy not just the people of Amalek, but also the animals of Amalek. They has to be totally destroyed. All other nations, they're not going to all be wiped out when Mashiach will come. On the contrary, Mashiach will come, it says all nations will serve Hashem. But Amalek, it says, he will be destroyed in a way that there's no memory of him. And since the Amalek comes to attack us because of the sin of false weights and measures, we must say that this sin is a very fundamental sin, and therefore the punishment for this sin is something that affects the very acceptance of the Torah. The very core of what accepting the Torah means is affected by this concept of this sin of having false weights and measures. And so too, this sin, which is what triggers Amalek, which opens the door for Amalek, is v'chas v'shalom what brought about the decree to annihilate all the Jewish people in one day. And this sin also, unfortunately, even the generation of Mashiach, generation of our generation, this is what we need to focus on, the sin of false weights and measures. What does this mean for us? Of course, the explanation is the Esid base. The possibility for there to be a door open for the Yetzer Hara, if the Yetzer Hara should be able to accomplish something in us, is when we have false weights and measures. That means that we have two kinds of measures. We have one measurement for the needs of our body and another measurement for the needs of our neshama. If a Jew would affect himself, he would inspire himself, that he wouldn't have two different kinds of measures, so then there would be no weakness in the service of Hashem, and automatically there would be no room for Yetzer Hara to have an opening. They should be able to accomplish something about getting us to indulge in what's kosher, and which is just not necessary, which is the kind of things Dr. Bresson doesn't like us to have. And Amalek certainly wouldn't be able to get us to do any averos, any terrible things. So what the key for Amalek, what opens the door for Amalek is that our value system is messed up. We have two different weights for our physical needs and our spiritual needs. We say our physical needs are more important and the spiritual needs are less important. And that's what makes Amalek attack. Next page. Ois Yud Gimel. Regarding the needs of our body, the approach has to be, the approach is, not the approach has to be, the approach shouldn't be this way, but the approach is that whatever you have isn't enough, as we said earlier. Whoever has $100 wants $200. And that's what is accepted as a given without any effort. As people say in America, never listen to say this, just nature of the beast. This is the way it is, that any effort by every person, and even someone who knows that there are those people who are less fortunate than them, and they're happy, but he has many reasons in his mind why he needs more. And the main thing is not so that he needs more, he wants more. It doesn't bother him that this can't be explained. He wants $200, and when he has 100, says the Gemara, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. If he has 200, he wants 400, and it's not hard for him to do anything possible to get the 400. That's Hashem. That's how a person approaches his physical needs. Whatever he has isn't enough. He wants more, and no effort is spared to get that more. And so too is this true regarding education of our sons and daughters, that as much effort that's given to enhance our children's education and their adaptation to culture, to put them in a way that they should fit in with their environment. The parents want their children to have the best education and to know about culture, so they should fit in. Parents aren't satisfied with that. And they continue to think, maybe I should give them a little bit more education of secular subjects. Maybe I should give them another possibility that they should be able to advance in their surroundings. And the parents any kind of effort isn't considered, no effort is spared of money and time in order to give their children even more. And similarly, when we talk about external things, like a building where children need to study, regarding secular subjects, a person is able to pull out of his pocket $250,000. Another guy could give $1 million. Another guy give $1.5 million, $2.5 million. And if they're at least learning secular subjects, even though they also learn Jewish subjects, then you find the guy who's going to contribute to it. When we talk about a building which they only learn holy subjects, so every donation is $18, which is considered appropriate. And how much more so? $36. But a bigger number is not my words, by the way. I'm quoting the Rebbe's words over here. But a bigger number, there's no room in his mind for a bigger number. He remembers what his Zayda told him about the cheder that he learned in, and how the Malamed, the teacher in the cheder, where his grandfather learned, got a few kopecks, this amount of kopecks a month. And he learned how the cheder, that little room his grandfather learned in, was 10 tvachim high. It was a few feet high, and halachically it had the status of a house, barely. So there's no need for big buildings. You don't need to have a big palace, a beautiful palace. How much more so you don't need to have a thing that that you don't need to have something that 3 generations ago no one was interested in. This is the approach of making a distinction between the two kinds of measures. That there is one kind of approach and one measurement for our bodily needs. That whatever you have isn't enough, and nothing is difficult to get more. But regarding the needs of the neshama, regarding holiness, pure holiness, there's another approach, there's another measurement that you could be satisfied in the conditions that you had, that your grandfather and great-grandfather had many generations ago. That's the issue. This approach that we make a distinction, we say this is important, this isn't important. That's what allows Yitzhahar to come in. Never said we could add another point. There's also 2 kinds of measurement in holiness. In other words, till now we're talking about how a person makes a distinction between the holy and the unholy, and he considers the unholy, the needs of his body, to be more important, and no effort, no expense is spared to get the needs of the body. No, and he'll work harder to get as much, to get more and more. The needs of neshama, we said that person isn't so. On the contrary, I'll just put a drop in. It's enough. I'll just give the $18, give chai, and I'm yotzei. I fulfill my obligation. So there is also a similar distinction within the realm of holiness itself. If this would not exist in the realm of holiness, the Rebbe says, this would not exist in the unholy, because the unholy has no existence on its own. In the language of the Gemara says that there was a tzaddik whose name I think was Rav Sheshis, who had a wife whose name was Yalta, and he told his wife Yalta, who apparently had some affinity for non-kosher food, he said, whatever the Torah told us we cannot have, there is something that is similar that's non-kosher, that's kosher. And he proceeded to prove to her everything that's non-kosher has a kosher similar thing. Corresponding to the meat and milk, you're allowed to eat the udder of an animal, which also has milk in it and still kosher. Corresponding to chazer, there's other foods which have a similar taste to that on a kosher animal. So whatever the Torah forbade to us, it's only because there's something kosher that's similar. And the point that we're making over here in regarding our subject is that because something exists in the realm of the holiness, that can trickle down, that could be a source for nourishing the unholy. So the truth is, Rebbe says, the approach that we have to the needs of our neshama has to be different to our approach to the needs of the body. The needs of our neshama should be far more than the needs of the body. But the problem is that it's the opposite, that we have an opposite approach. What this means is like this. The godly soul comes and tells the Jew, listen, you need to know, always remember, you can't forget that you are a child of the King of all kings, Hashem. And Hashem says about the Jewish people, you are my firstborn. You are children to Hashem. This is something that's given to you without any effort, without you doing anything. As we say in our prayers, how beautiful is our inheritance. That means we got the Torah as an inheritance. You're a child of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You're a son of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You're a daughter of Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And automatically, in every place that you are, and everything that you're doing, you have to act in a way that's appropriate for the king of her child, of the King of all kings. And this knowledge should not allow you to do things which are not fitting to the respect, to the glory of the King of all kings. How much more so should you not use God's gifts to you, the strength that God gave you, to do something that's the opposite of the will of Hashem? That's what intellect would tell us. This doesn't require meditation for many hours to realize that this is the way you're supposed to act. How much more so? And another point, knowing that you are a child of King of all kings, certainly if you really wanted to act this way, Hashem would help you. Our Father in heaven, that we will be able to act in a way that Hashem wants us to. Sometimes Hashem gives us things without any effort, without any tests. And sometimes Hashem tests us to see if we remember that we're God's children, that you're a child of Hashem. And Hashem stands there and helps you in everything that you're doing. But it's clear that the end is, if you want to, Hashem will help you do what Hashem wants you to do. Right, David? David went to daven already. But this, as long as you want to with an emes. On the other hand, we're talking about the animal soul, which is connected to the body. Everyone recognizes, even someone who considers the body to be very, who says the body, yeah, it's very precious to him. And the whole value of the body is only because the body is alive. And the reason the body is alive is not because of itself. Rather, it's because there's something in it that animates it. And that's why it's able to move around. That's why it has intelligence. That's why it's able to think about what it should do, what it shouldn't do, because there's something there that's making it tick. And since this is true, thinking about the body and reckoning and giving in to what the body wants, and to that has to be only with such a approach, such a measurement that fits in with what animates the body. You should only satisfy the needs of the body with what, according to what is animating the body. But after you've fulfilled the needs of the body by eating and drinking and sleeping in time, as the Rambam says, you shouldn't think more about the body, because the body is only a garment for your neshama. You should only think about what gives life to the body, which is a neshama. That's the way we need to approach the needs of our neshama, the needs of the body, and regarding of Eifa in holiness, the measurements we have to have in holiness. Regarding our neshama, since it's eternal, so the needs of the neshama are also eternal, and they will always continue. The needs of the body, since the body is not eternal, and it only exists because the soul is inside the body and animating the body, so whatever you remember about the body, whatever connection you have to the body, whatever thing you do to help the body, that has an interruption. It doesn't last forever. Because after you eat and you drink and you sleep, then you stop thinking about the body. And you should instead be involved in only thinking about what animates the body, meaning the neshama. So that's the way things are supposed to be in holiness, meaning there are supposed to be two different kinds of measurements. You are supposed to have a higher measurement for the needs of neshama than the needs of the body. The pound that weighs more is supposed to be the pound of the neshama. That's what it's supposed to be. And because it doesn't, because we have the wrong set of measurements, that's what allows Amalek to attack us. Because we put the needs of the body as supreme, that's what makes all the problems. But the truth is, Rebbe says, what makes the body tick? It's only the neshama. The body has no value to you. The body is temporary. So take care of the body, keep it alive as long as it's to keep its value, that it should be a garment for the neshama. But once you're done keeping it alive and making it tick, then focus on what it's all about what makes it tick, what animates it, the neshama. All right. Have a great Freilichen Purim, Jonathan. Freilichen Purim, Berabel. Freilichen Purim, Michal Mordechai. Freilichen Purim, Dr. Bressman. Sei gesund. Dr. Bressman, you had a question? Okay.